You are likely surrounded by noise right now. Even if the room is quiet, the digital hum is deafening. There is a screen demanding your eyes, a notification waiting for your touch, a podcast filling the empty space in your car, or a playlist drowning out the rhythm of your own walk. We have built a civilization dedicated to the eradication of silence. We have constructed a world where it is possible to go from the moment we wake until the moment we collapse into sleep without ever having to be alone with a single unmediated thought. We call this connection. We call it being informed. But if we are honest, we must call it what it truly is, a frantic, desperate escape. We are terrified of the void. There is a profound anxiety that rises when the external stimulation stops. It is that split second of panic when the Wi-Fi goes down, or the battery dies, or you find yourself waiting in a line without your phone. In that gap, the silence rushes in, and with it comes the crushing weight of the self. We run from this silence because it acts as a mirror. When the noise stops, we are forced to confront the person we actually are, rather than the person we perform as for the world. We are forced to hear the questions we have been diligently drowning out. Are we living the life we chose, or just the one that was handed to us? Are we free, or are we merely moving in a track laid down by habit and social expectation? The modern world has convinced us that freedom is the ability to go anywhere and consume anything. It tells us that liberty is found in the endless variety of choices on a streaming service or the infinite scroll of a social feed. But the ancient wisdom of the Stoics suggests that this is not freedom at all. It is a subtle and insidious form of slavery. When you cannot sit still in a room by yourself without reaching for a distraction, you are not free. You are bound by your impulses. You are a puppet, jerked around by the strings of boredom and anxiety. You are, as the philosophers would say, a slave to externals, dependent on things outside of your control to maintain your internal equilibrium. Consider the energy you expend trying to avoid this solitude. We treat being alone as a pathology, a state of loneliness that must be cured by immediate social contact or digital validation. We conflate solitude with isolation. But there is a massive distinction. Isolation is a craving for the presence of others, born out of weakness. Solitude is a strength born out of self-sufficiency, is IA. In isolation, you feel the absence of the crowd. In true solitude, you feel the presence of yourself. By fleeing from solitude, we are forfeiting the only environment where true strength of character can be forged. We are like architects trying to build a skyscraper in the middle of a hurricane. Without the stillness to lay a deep foundation, everything we build is fragile. This fragility manifests in our exhaustion. We are tired not just because we are busy, but because we are constantly reactive. We live on the defensive. An email lands and we react. A headline flashes and we react. A friend posts a photo and we feel a pang of envy or a surge of validation. We are engaged in a perpetual, high-speed game of emotional ping-pong with the world. We have handed over the keys to our mind to anyone who walks by with a loud enough voice or a shiny enough object. We have forgotten the concept of the inner citadel, that fortress within the mind that should remain impenetrable to the chaos of the outside world. The cost of this constant connection is the erosion of the self. We are slowly forgetting how to think, how to reflect, and how to govern ourselves. We are becoming, in the words of the ancients, preoccupied, people who are so busy with the business of living that they never actually learn how to live. We are spending our finite time on earth reacting to the agendas of others, leaving no time to chart our own course. We are terrified of being moral outliers, of standing apart from the herd, so we blend in, consuming the same information, feeling the same outraged emotions, and thinking the same thoughts as everyone else, all to avoid the terrifying prospect of standing alone. But true success, the kind that allows you to remain unshakable in the face of adversity, the kind that allows you to lead rather than follow, requires a reclamation of this lost territory. It requires the courage to unplug, to step back, and to enter the silence that terrifies the mediocre. It requires us to stop looking for a retreat in the mountains or the seaside and realize, as Marcus Aurelius wrote, that the most peaceful and less busy retreat is found inside one's own soul. But we can only find this retreat if we stop running away from the gate. We are going to explore how to turn this terrifying silence into your greatest asset. We are going to look at how to move from a state of frantic reactivity to a state of sovereign power. This is not about becoming a hermit or rejecting society. It is about engaging with the world from a position of strength rather than need. It is about realizing that you have the power to step out of the current whenever you choose and stand on the solid ground of your own reasoned choice. You have been sleepwalking through a carnival of distractions. It is time to wake up. To find this freedom, you must first build what the ancient philosophers called the inner citadel. This is not a metaphor for emotional repression or a stone wall built to keep people out. It is a fortress of perspective. It is the cultivated ability to retreat into a part of yourself that the world cannot touch, a sanctuary where your reason reigns supreme and where the chaos of external events cannot enter without your permission. Most of us live with the drawbridge down. We allow every passerby, every headline, and every rude comment to walk right into the center of our minds and set up camp. We let the outside world dictate our internal weather. If the news is bad, we are depressed. If our boss is angry, we are anxious. If we get a compliment, we are high, we are porous, we have no boundaries. We have forgotten that while we cannot control what happens to us, we have absolute, godlike authority over how we judge what happens to us. This brings us to the most critical discipline you can master in your solitude, the discipline of assent. This is the practice of standing guard at the door of your mind. Imagine that every thought, every emotion, and every impulse is a visitor knocking on that door. The average person opens the door to everyone, letting in fear, jealousy, and anger, serving them tea and letting them trash the place. The Stoic, however, installs a watchman. When a thought arrives, "I am being insulted," or "this situation is a disaster," the watchman does not open the door. He looks through the peephole. He asks, "Is this true? Is this helpful? Is this actually within my control?" If the answer is no, the door stays shut. You simply watch the impulse arise, acknowledge it, and let it fade away. You realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. This gap, the split second between the stimulus and your response, is where your freedom lives. In the noise of modern life, this gap has been compressed to zero. We react instantly. We tweet, we shout, we buy, we cry. But in solitude, you can widen that gap. You can slow down the film. You can look at your own anger and say, "I see you, but I do not have to become you." This practice reveals a startling truth. You have been suffering not because of events, but because of your opinions about events. The world is just matter in motion. It is neutral. It is your judgment that labels things good or bad. When you remove the judgment, you remove the pain. As the emperor philosopher reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Consider the immense power of that statement. You can revoke the power of the world to hurt you. You can look at a financial loss, a breakup, or a public failure, and instead of spiraling into despair, you can view it simply as dispreferred indifference. It is not what you wanted, certainly, but it does not touch your character. It does not ruin your ability to be a good person, to act with integrity, or to help others. Therefore, in the grand scheme of things, it does not matter. You remain whole. This is why solitude is dangerous to the status quo. A person who has found their inner citadel is impossible to manipulate. You cannot sell them things they don't need because they know their happiness comes from within. You cannot scare them with threats of ostracization because they value their own self-respect more than the applause of the crowd. They are free in a way that is terrifying to a society built on dependency and fear. But do not mistake this for passivity. This is the opposite of resignation. Once you have secured your internal fortress, you do not hide in it. You sally forth from it. You act. But now, your actions are not frantic reactions to the puppet strings of the world. They are deliberate, focused, and powerful. You move through the world with the reserve clause. You do your absolute best to achieve your goals, but you accept that the outcome is ultimately not up to you. You are like an archer. You control the training, the aim, and the release of the arrow. Once it leaves the bow, if the wind blows it off course, you do not weep. You simply draw another arrow. This detachment from the outcome makes you invincible. You are no longer bargaining with the universe, saying, I will only be happy if I get X. You are saying, I will be happy regardless of X, but I will still work towards it. You become a warrior who cannot be defeated because the only things you value, your character, your choices, your capacity to love, are things that can never be taken away from you. Once you have established the perimeter of your inner citadel, you must confront the enemy that besieges it. This enemy is not a person, nor is it a specific event. It is a deep, agonizing addiction to validation. In the absence of solitude, we have forgotten how to weigh our own value. We have outsourced our self-esteem to the marketplace of public opinion. We post, we share, we comment, and then we wait. We wait for the digital nod of approval, the statistical proof that we exist and that we matter. We have become like the courtiers in an ancient palace, terrified of making a move without checking the expression on the king's face. But in this case, the king is the they, that faceless, shifting mass of other people's opinions. The Stoics viewed this dependency as the ultimate degradation of the soul. They asked a simple, piercing question. If you do not know who you are without the applause of the crowd, do you exist at all? When you are alone, truly alone, the applause stops. The likes disappear. The feedback loop is severed. This is why the silence feels so heavy. It is the weight of your own emptiness pressing down on you. You realize that you have built a mansion of identity on the quicksand of other people's perceptions. You feel anxious because you are suffering from withdrawal from the drug of external validation. This is where the modern crisis of burnout intersects with ancient wisdom. We are told that we are burning out because we have too much work, but the truth is often deeper. We are burning out because we are living in a society of positivity and achievement, where we are constantly performing. We are the entrepreneurs of our own lives, endlessly marketing ourselves, endlessly optimizing our image. We exploit ourselves more ruthlessly than any slave driver ever could because we do it willingly, driven by the delusion that if we just achieve enough, we will finally be enough. But the finish line never comes. The moment you achieve a goal, the goalpost moves. The moment you get the applause, the silence returns and you need a fresh hit. Solitude is the cure for this spiritual exhaustion because it forces you to step off the stage. It is the dressing room where the costume comes off. In the quiet, you can begin the terrifying but necessary work of distinguishing between what you do and who you are. You can begin to reclaim your psychic energy. Attention is a finite resource, the fuel of your consciousness. Every time you fret over a comment, every time you scroll through a feed comparing your life to a curated highlight reel of someone else, you are leaking this fuel. You are dissipating your power. When you sit in solitude, you plug the leaks. You might feel boredom at first. In fact, you will feel it intensely. But you must understand that boredom is not a defect, it is a filter. In our hyperstimulated world, we have lost the capacity for deep boredom. We kill time with cheap entertainment before it can ripen into creativity. We suffocate the silence before it can speak. But if you can endure that initial wave of restlessness, if you can sit with the itch without scratching it, you break through to the other side. You enter a state of mental clarity where your attention, no longer fractured by 1,000 tiny distractions, coalesces into a laser beam. This is the state from which all great work originates. It is the state of flow. It is impossible to enter flow when you are constantly looking over your shoulder to see if anyone is watching. Flow requires the total abandonment of the self-conscious ego. It requires you to be so immersed in the task, so connected to the immediate reality, that you forget to care about what the world thinks. The Stoic master does not act for the sake of the reputation the action will bring. They act because the action itself is right. They find the reward in the doing, not in the result. This shift transforms you from a beggar into a king. A beggar needs things from others: attention, affirmation, status. A king possesses his own resources. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you stop needing the world to entertain you. When you learn to value your own judgment, you stop needing the world to approve of you. You become autotelic, a person who has their purpose within themselves. You become dangerous to the status quo because you are no longer easily manipulated by fear or desire. You can walk away from a bad deal because you are not afraid of being poor. You can walk away from a toxic relationship because you are not afraid of being alone. You can speak the truth because you are not afraid of being disliked. The practice of solitude, then, is a training ground for reality. It is where you dry run the difficulties of life. You visualize the worst-case scenarios, the loss of your job, the loss of your status, the loss of your health. And you realize that even if these things happened, your essential self, the ruling center of your mind, would remain untouched. You realize that you are not your bank account. You are not your job title. You are the conscious observer who experiences these things, and that observer is indestructible. But how do we take this power out of the room and back into the chaotic world? How do we maintain this fortress of calm when the emails start pouring in and the demands of life resume? We must learn to carry the silence with us. Now comes the hardest part. You must leave the room. You must take this silence, this newfound sovereignty, and carry it back into the noise. It is easy to be a philosopher in a quiet study. It is much harder to remain one in a traffic jam, a heated board meeting, or a crumbling relationship. When you step back into the current of daily life, the world will immediately try to drag you back into its rhythm of frantic reactivity. It will try to make you care about things that do not matter and fear things that cannot hurt you. To maintain your footing, you need a tool that the Stoics perfected, a mental maneuver known as the view from above. When you feel the walls closing in, when a deadline looms like a catastrophe, or an insult feels like a crushing weight, you must detach your mind and let it float upward. Imagine rising above your physical body. Rise above the roof of your building, above your city, until the people below are nothing more than ants scrambling over crumbs. Go higher still, until the earth is just a pale blue dot suspended in a vast, freezing void of space. From this vantage point, look at your problem. How big is it? The empire that seems so permanent is just a flash in the pan of cosmic time. The reputation you are so terrified of losing is a whisper in a hurricane. This exercise is not meant to make you feel insignificant in a depressing way. It is meant to liberate you from the tyranny of the trivial. It washes away the false urgency that modern life imposes on you. You realize that you are a tiny part of a magnificent, interconnected whole. The Stoics called this sympathia, the realization that what is bad for the hive is bad for the bee, but also that the bee's individual anxieties are irrelevant to the grandeur of the hive. With this perspective, you can re-enter the world of action, but with a fundamentally different operating system. You engage in what we might call the discipline of action. Most people act with a desperate attachment to the result. They say, I must get this promotion, or this project must succeed, and if it doesn't, they are crushed. Their self-worth is gambled on the outcome. The Stoic, however, acts with a reserve clause. It is a subtle but powerful psychological shift. You do not say, I will achieve this. You say, I will achieve this, fate permitting. You commit yourself fully to the effort. You leave nothing on the field, but you simultaneously accept that the outcome is not in your hands. You are the archer. Your job is to string the bow, aim with precision, and release the arrow with perfect form. Once the arrow leaves the string, it belongs to the wind. If a gust blows it off course, you do not curse the wind, you simply draw another arrow. This mindset makes you dangerous in the best possible sense. You become relentless. Because you are not paralyzed by the fear of failure, you can take risks that terrify others. Because you do not need the immediate validation of a win, you can play the long game. You stop asking, will this work? And start asking, is this right? You move from a transactional relationship with the world to a principled one. This brings us to the most difficult test of all, other people. When you are operating from a place of deep solitude and self-mastery, you will inevitably encounter friction with those who are still sleepwalking. You will deal with the ungrateful, the arrogant, the deceitful, and the jealous. The temptation will be to retreat, to lock the gates of your inner citadel and look down on them with disdain. But that is the path of cowardice, not wisdom. True strength is found in staying engaged without being corrupted. You must view these difficult people not as enemies, but as fellow patients in the hospital of existence. They are acting out of ignorance. They are chasing mirages of happiness because they do not know any better. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he would meet such people, but that he could not be angry with them, for they were of the same blood, not physically, but intellectually. They possess the same spark of reason, even if it is currently buried under layers of confusion. You must learn to act like the vine that produces grapes. When a vine produces a cluster of grapes, it does not ask for applause. It does not demand a tax deduction. It does not stand around waiting for the farmer to say, "Thank you." It simply moves on to produce the next cluster. It is its nature to produce. It should be your nature to do good, to create, to lead, and to help, regardless of whether you are recognized or rewarded. You do it because to do otherwise would be to deny your own potential. You do it because it is what a healthy human being does. By anchoring your happiness in your own actions rather than the responses of others, you become unbreakable. You can love without needing to be loved back. You can give without needing to receive. You can lead without needing to be followed. You have severed the strings of dependency. You have found the only freedom that actually exists, the freedom to be true to yourself, regardless of the circumstances. But there is one final lock on the door of total freedom. There is one shadow that hangs over even the strongest mind, one ultimate discomfort that we must not only face, but embrace if we are to truly live. We have arrived at the final gate. To truly unlock this freedom, you must confront the one shadow that hangs over even the strongest mind, the ultimate discomfort that we spend our entire lives trying to outrun, your own mortality. In the silence of your solitude, you can no longer pretend that you are infinite. You can no longer distract yourself from the biological fact that your time is a rapidly depleting resource. Most people view death as a thief, a tragedy that steals their future, but the Stoic views death differently. They view it as the frame that gives the picture its beauty. They view it as the deadline that gives the project its urgency. You must engage in the practice of Memento Mori, remembering that you will die. This is not a morbid exercise designed to depress you. It is a tool for radical prioritization. When you truly grasp in your bones that you could leave life right now, it clarifies everything. Suddenly, the petty arguments don't matter. The embarrassment of failure doesn't matter. The opinion of the crowd doesn't matter. What matters is, did you live? Did you do the work you were capable of? Did you love the people you were with? Consider the immense power of this perspective. If you knew with absolute certainty that today was your last day on earth, would you spend it scrolling through social media? Would you spend it worrying about a promotion? Would you spend it holding a grudge? Of course not. You would strip away the non-essential. You would be entirely present. You would savor the taste of your coffee, the warmth of the sun, and the sound of a loved one's voice. You would live with an intensity and a gratitude that is usually reserved for the dying. The secret of the free person is that they choose to live this way now, while they are still healthy and strong. They do not wait for a final warning to wake up. They use the reality of our finite time to shock themselves into life every single morning. This leads to the concept of the completed life. We are conditioned to think that a successful life is a long one, filled with accumulated achievements and possessions. We think we need to reach retirement to be finished. But the ancients argued that the length of a life is irrelevant. What matters is its quality. A play can be short or long. Its excellence depends on the performance, not the duration. As the emperor philosopher noted, 3 acts can make a complete play if the ending is right. You have the power to make your life complete in every single moment. How? By acting with total integrity and presence right now. If you act with justice, with courage, and with self-control in this present moment, you have achieved the goal of existence. You have realized your nature. If your life were to end 5 minutes from now, you would have finished well. You would leave no unfinished business of the soul. You stop living for a vague, distant future where you will finally be happy, and you start finding your happiness in the excellent performance of your duties today. You realize that the good life is not a destination you arrive at, it is a manner of traveling. This is the ultimate liberation. When you are no longer afraid of death, you can no longer be coerced. You cannot be threatened. You become, in a very real sense, unconquerable. You are free to speak the truth, because the worst that can happen is that you lose your status or your comfort, both of which you have already accepted as temporary loans from nature. You are free to take risks, to build great things, to love deeply, because you are not trying to save yourself for later. You are spending yourself now, so return to the silence. Do not fear it. Embrace it as the forge of your character. Turn off the noise. Put down the phone. Sit with yourself and build your inner citadel. Learn to distinguish between the events of the world and your judgments about them. Reclaim your attention from the merchants of distraction. And when you step back out into the world, do not go as a puppet pulled by strings of anxiety and desire. Go as a sovereign. Go as someone who knows that they possess everything they need within themselves. You have the keys. The door is open. Walk through it.